This call is now being recorded.
Ma'am, can you see the screen, ma'am?
Yes, doctor. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So, shall I start the presentation,
Please.
ma'am?
Yeah,
Yes,
please
ma'am.
start.
Yes, ma'am. So, 27-year-old male named Rangaswamy, who hails from Chintadripet, Chennai, who is working as a clerk, and the informant is himself, presents to the OPD with chief complaints of fever for the past 3 weeks, fatigue for the past 3 weeks, and abdominal pain for the past 5 days.
Okay.
History of presenting illness, fever for the past 3 weeks, which is insidious in onset and gradual in progression. It is high grade. It is intermittent, appears once in 3 days, and the fever persists for a few hours when it occurs. It is associated with chills and rigor. There is no aggravating factors, and it is relieved on taking paracetamol. There is no diurnal variation. No rash is reported, and there is no history of joint pain.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Fatigue for the past 3 weeks, which is insidious in onset, gradually progressive, and unable to perform daily activities, which is due to this fatigue. Abdominal pain for the past 5 days, which is insidious in onset and gradually progressive. It is a mild, dull, aching pain and localized to the left upper quadrant of the abdomen. There is no diurnal or postural variation and no radiation of pain. It is not related to food intake. There is no associated dyspnea, chest pain, and palpitations, and there are no symptoms of increased urination and thirst. There is no history of jaundice, no history of constipation and diarrhea, no history of rashes, no history of burning micturition, urgency, and loin pain. There is no history of vomiting blood or passing black tarry stools. There is no history of breathlessness, cough, or wheezing. There is no history of evening rise of temperature or cough with hemoptysis. There is no history of joint pain and no history of bone pain, ma'am.
Okay. 1 minute.
Ah,
Go
yes,
to the
ma'am.
presenting fever. No? That
Yes.
slide.
Yes, ma'am. This line, ma'am.
Okay. So, yeah. Okay. Now, this is a fairly good history of presenting illness. You have covered everything. So, anyway, we will discuss in detail. Now, fever. Define fever.
Fever is defined as the increase in the core body temperature above the hypothalamic set point and is defined as more than 99.6 Fahrenheit at 6 p.m. or 98.6 Fahrenheit at 6 a.m. ma'am.
Wow, great. Nice, good.
Yes,
So,
thank you.
so this is how you will say fever. Now, what is hyperthermia?
Hyperthermia is a condition wherein, due to the lack of the hypothalamus's ability to set set point, there is increase in body temperature due to external factors such as heat, due to drugs, etc., ma'am. So it's the inability to hypothalamus to maintain body temperature, ma'am.
Actually, the hypothalamic axis is normal. It is the external factors, right, which
Yes, ma'am.
raises. So, usually, when do you get this hyperthermia?
Usually in heat stroke, ma'am.
Yeah, very good. Heat stroke. And
It's also,
in your, where is the pediatric?
ma'am, it can also be seen in serotonin syndrome,
Very good. And
neuroleptic malignant syndrome.
yes, very good. And
Mm,
then, in babies and all, no? Usually the preterm babies and all when they are born. So what do? No, we'll put in the warmer, okay?
yes,
And
ma'am.
then they will do some phototherapy and all. So you'll be, have you all finished pediatric or you must be having some idea. So those things, no, they'll put it under the warmer. Nowadays, it's all controlled. Like you have a, that feedback and all that advances, but still, it's not foolproof. No, all our instruments have some amount of breakdown and all that stuff. So we are all so busy. So at that time, we may leave the child and be attending other activities. So that time, the patient, the person, the children, no, they don't know how to cry out and all that stuff. So
Yes,
they
ma'am.
may develop hyperthermia. So that is the difference between fever and hyperthermia. Now, tell me the types of fever.
Yes, ma'am. So the types of fever are continuous fever, remittent fever, intermittent fever, and relapsing fever, ma'am.
Okay. What is this? Your case is intermittent high grade
Intermittent.
associated with chills and rises.
Yes, ma'am.
So typical of what?
Ma'am, this is pointing more towards any malaria or any infectious disease, ma'am, especially malaria, ma'am.
Malaria. So now, why do you get chills and rigors in a malarial fever? Generally, in a fever, why should you get the chills and rigors?
Yes, ma'am. So usually, if there is a abrupt changing of the hypothalamic set point due to the pyrogens, in the abrupt change, what happens is there is chills due to muscular contractions to generate heat, and rigor due to the piloerection, ma'am. So it's due to the sudden change in the temperature, ma'am.
Okay, so that is and it usually ends with what? Usually
Ends with sweating, ma'am. Sweating.
Profuse sweating. You have to see
yes,
to see, you should see the patients. No, typically, this is the phase when the hypothalamic set point is higher because of what? When does the fever occur in malarial fever?
Ma'am, fever mainly occurs in the when the erythrocytes are lysed, when the release of the schizon. Gametocyte. Schizon, sorry, ma'am.
Yes, that is the time when the fever occurs. Now the hypothalamus, because of all the toxins, the hypothalamic set point becomes higher. Now what does the body do is by starting, when we are normally going to a very cold atmosphere, we all start shivering. Why do we shiver in a cold atmosphere?
In order to generate body heat, ma'am.
In order to generate body heat. Normally itself, when we go to a hill station or when we are suddenly exposed to very very cold temperature, even we start shivering. So this shivering is a protective mechanism because we are generating the heat to protect ourselves. In malaria, why are we getting this chills and rigors? Is there any rationale behind this? Why should we have this?
Ma'am, it is because the release of the pyrogens when the erythrocytes are lysed.
Release of the pyrogens, but is it a protective mechanism?
No, ma'am, it's not a protective mechanism. It is, in a way, it is stimulating the hypothalamus to perceive as if there is some heat normally. So it is an abnormal or pathological phenomenon.
But actually, what happens is this hyperthermia, it is a very primitive way of protecting. When the temperature raises, all the bacteria and viruses, they may die, So this is it is a protective mechanism, but it is going haywire. Like a lot of things, like you can see of autoimmunity and all like that stuff, Many things. Those days when not much antibiotics were there, hyperthermia was also a form of a treatment. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is actually a protective, but it goes like beyond certain stage, it becomes harmful to us. Then
yes, ma'am.
Once the hypothalamus is reset, that is where paracetamol and all, your NSAIDs and all, it resets to a normal temperature. Or naturally our body will reset, and that is the time you have a profuse sweating. Okay, so this is your typical thing of a fever, chills with rigors, and it ends with a profuse sweating. Now, I'm not going to go in depth of all this malarial thing. What are the other conditions where you can get high-grade fever, chills, and rigors?
Yes, ma'am. We can also get it in Hodgkin lymphoma, ma'am.
No. A-grade fever, no.
Malaria, Kala Azar, ma'am.
Okay, one. Then?
Babesiosis.
Okay. That is almost like your malaria.
CML, ma'am, can come in CML.
No. Moderate. You say
viral infections, ma'am.
What infection? Very good.
Viral infection. Viral.
Okay, now you're not a 12th standard student, no? You're a physician, you're a clinician. In 6 months' time, you're going to become a CRRI. Be very specific what you're telling. What other infections? Any pneumonia? Pneumonia? Urinary tract infections? Complicated.
Yes,
what is that complicated urinary tract infection?
Pyelonephritis, ma'am.
Pyelonephritis, your pneumonia, community acquired pneumonia. Patient will have high-grade fever, chills with rigors, which will be intermittent. Okay. So it's not, of course, malaria will have this typical pattern, that is once in 3 days and all, but you will have to think of all the other things. That is what you have tried to rule out, right? You have said that no history of burning micturition. All that is what you are trying to rule out for this specific fever only. Okay, fever with cough, with expectation, all that, chest pain. All that is the fever, chills. Typically, we are going to think. Always we should be locally sensitive also. Like in Tamil Nadu or in Chennai, what is more common? So we should be sensitive as far as infection goes. In Northeast, what sort of things are common? Like that, Each region-wise also we should be very sensitive about it. Okay, then Suppose if it is intermittent, okay, we finished. Remittent fever. What is the difference between
Yes, ma'am.
intermittent, remittent, and continuous fever?
Ma'am. So, ma'am, in continuous fever, in duration of 24 hours, assuming that the patient is not taking any medication, the fever will always be above the baseline, and
Yes.
the it will be variable, but the variations will not exceed 1 degree centigrade, ma'am. So
Okay.
it is more common in lobar pneumonia. It is common in UTI, and it's common in typhoid, ma'am. The continuous fever.
Okay.
Remittent fever is where, again, for in a duration of 24 hours, the temperature will always be above the baseline, but the variation will be more than 2 degrees centigrade. So it is more commonly seen in the cases of in amoebic liver abscess. It may be seen. It can also be seen in brucellosis.
Brucellosis. Very good. Very good.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So
yeah.
okay, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
What is a typical fever pattern in enteric fever?
Yes, ma'am. In enteric fever, we see step ladder pattern of fever, ma'am.
Step ladder. That is one. That means, what is that step ladder pattern?
Yes, ma'am. So it will always be above baseline, but it will have intermittent. It will have at times it will have spikes in a step ladder fashion.
Yeah, that is what. Okay, so that is the thing. Okay, very good. Now, so we have talked about intermittent fevers. Of course, we spoke about all that. Then what is this relapsing fever and Philipstein fever? Then we'll go off to the next point.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, relapsing fever is when the fever appears for a few days or a few weeks, and it's followed by a period where it is not even present. So it is more commonly seen in cases of leptospirosis and borreliosis, and it can be seen in these conditions, ma'am. The relapsing fever.
Dengue.
Yes,
Now,
ma'am.
this is the season, starting of dengue, we are seeing.
Dengue, we can see. We can see.
Bone fever. Okay, somebody else can answer. Not only Vikram, no?
Breakbone fever, ma'am.
Yeah. So to explain.
Biphasic fever seen in dengue.
What, doctor?
Biphasic fever.
Very good. So biphasic pattern, breakbone fever. It will be fever with photophobia. No, patient will have not photophobia rather. Photophobia is your meningitis. You'll have a retroorbital pain. Typical,
Yes,
no. This dengue fever will be high grade fever with the retroorbital pain. Then after 2 days it subsides. Then the third day, no, it again starts. Now that is the stage when we are like it comes to the critical phase starts up.
Yes, ma'am.
So then what is the other fever which will come for 2 to 3 days, subside and again come?
Philipstein.
Philipstein is in months.
Weak.
Infection. In a month?
Philipstein fever will come for 2 weeks, then not come again for 2 weeks, ma'am.
Yeah. That goes on, and it is a mild to moderate only. No,
Yes, ma'am.
It goes, it comes. No, that is how the typical history. So we should always be alert when such a history comes. Okay, leptospirosis. Now that also
Yes,
has
ma'am.
this sort of a pattern. Now the second peak is when we start. I mean the first thing, then it settles down, and the second time when it comes, that is when you have all the complications. Now I think we are in that, no, because of this Chennai rains happened, no, last
Yes, ma'am.
week and the week back. All that sort of we have seen a lot of this leptospirosis with its complications. Now it's a season of your dengue, so we have started seeing dengue also. So you should be aware of all the infectious disease. You should be so you can get as a theory also, even in clinics, no, in Viva Voce or somewhere or the other, you'll be questioned with all this thing. Okay.
Yes,
Then
ma'am.
no diurnal variation. Okay, so diurnal variation importance is evening rise of temperature, moderate temperature associated with sweating and all, seen typically in
TB and Hodgkin lymphoma, ma'am.
TB, Hodgkin's lymphoma. So all this, that will have that low grade fever,
Yes,
some
ma'am.
evening rise, some, all that. So if such a sort of a fever occurs, we have to suspect all that. Okay,
Yes.
no rashes reported, very good, because you want to rule out
Exanthems, ma'am. Exanthematous fevers.
exanthem. Okay, one exanthem. What is the age of this patient?
Age is 1 second, ma'am. 27 years, ma'am.
Yeah, so 27. What exanthems will be common in this age group?
Meningococcemia is common, ma'am. Meningococcus infection.
Meningococcemia is not toxic. He is not CNS involvement is there? No.
No, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Also, typhus is possible if he is having any travel history.
Yeah, travel history, typhus is possible. Apart from your dengue and
Dengue.
infect fever, what type of rashes you will get?
Pearl spots. Rose spots. Sorry, ma'am. Rose spots. Yes, ma'am.
Usually in the second week you may see the rose spots. Okay, and no history of joint pains because you want to rule out your rheumatic fever also along
yes,
with
ma'am.
that, or any viral fever which may have your arthralgia.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this is the history. Okay, next slide.
Yes, ma'am.
So associated with fatigue, in not able to perform daily activities, maybe because of fever, you want to bring it out, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Or what else can it be? Fatigue. Fever
Fatigue can also be due to the TB, Hodgkin lymphoma. Could be due to the. Yes,
you
ma'am.
want to think of infectious, but also, though it is a 27-year-old, we still think of all these hematological malignancies also should start coming in our mind when such a history of fatigue also is there. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Next.
Abdominal
Okay, abdominal pain 5 days, dull aching, very good. It is in the left upper quadrant. No variation. So typical this history suggests what?
Ma'am, this suggests the splenomegaly, ma'am. In the.
So what
Yes, ma'am.
sort of pain you will get in splenomegaly? The
Ma'am.
dull aching pain. Why are you getting that dull aching pain?
Ma'am, the dull aching pain is because of the visceral involvement, ma'am. So that shows that the splenic organ, the organ itself, involved.
They'll say some dragging sort of pain they'll give. So that is your typical history. Okay, suppose
Yes,
if
ma'am.
it is pain, but tenderness may not be there. If it is associated with tenderness, what are the possibilities?
If there is tenderness, we may have to consider infectious causes, or we can consider congestive splenomegaly, ma'am, mainly. If there's tenderness due to,
Due to?
it could be portal
Others?
hypertension,
Can infection present as
Infarction.
infarction,
Very good. Splenic infarction, splenic abscess.
Splenic abscess.
You
Yes,
can
ma'am.
have that. Where will you get this? Splenic infarction and splenic abscess. Not abscess, but infarction you may
sorry.
get in. Where will you get?
Sickle cell disease.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Sickle cell, very good. That is, he's a 27-year-old male, no? That is why I asked the age again.
Infarction.
What? Suppose if the patient is having rheumatic heart disease? Some infection with the heart disease?
Infective
endocarditis.
Active endocarditis. Okay,
yes,
that is
ma'am.
there. Then acute fever. So now we are talking of this enteric fever, no? Those people also can have a tender splenomegaly. Infective endocarditis, you can have a tender splenomegaly. There are a few conditions where you can have fever with a tender splenomegaly. So this is your very good history, what you are seeing. Okay, then not related to food intake. Okay, then you are coming on to the negative history. Chest
Yes,
pain,
ma'am.
palpitation, dyspnea. That is why your cardiac thing. Okay, previous one.
Sorry, ma'am. Sorry.
No issue. Then, okay, of course, next. The UTI you have tried to rule out. Next. Okay, so constipation, diarrhea. Why do you want to see this? Why that history of, suppose there is history of alternate constipation and diarrhea.
It could be irritable bowel syndrome.
Irritable bowel syndrome with fever, no. We
fever.
are talking
Sorry,
about
ma'am.
your case only. Of course,
yes, ma'am.
generally you can talk anything under the sun. Your case.
Yes, ma'am. Mainly to rule out any gastrointestinal infections which cause diarrhea, like typhoid.
Yeah, another person, some other person. Tell me. Others?
viral etiology, ma'am. Viral causes which cause diarrhea.
Viral cause, why should it cause constipation with diarrhea? I am saying alternate there is history. Some days I have diarrhea, some days I have constipation. That history with a background of fever for 3 weeks duration. Tuberculous abdomen, TB abdomen also, that intestinal involvement can present with alternate constipation diarrhea. Then suppose if it is a GI malignancy also, you can have this. With the loss of weight, loss of appetite and all those, it can be there. Okay. Okay, then no burning micturition, no hematemesis, okay. Joint pain, okay. Loss of weight, loss of appetite, have you mentioned?
Ma'am, actually, He does have in personal history. I've put, ma'am, loss of appetite is there.
That you have to bring in the 3 weeks duration. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
the 3 weeks duration, we'll have to tell that. That is the most important point. You will have to bring it.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. There is a history of loss of weight and loss of appetite. I think you'll all know what is significant loss of weight.
Ma'am, weight loss isn't there, ma'am, for this patient.
No, it's not there.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
When you say there is a significant weight loss?
Ma'am, 10% loss of 10% of body weight in 6 months, ma'am.
6 months time. Very good. So usually, see, even you and I never know that what is our exactly, what is our weight and what is today's weight, tomorrow's weight or something. But when the person watches you and sees a significant loss of weight, you can ask whether others told you that you have lost weight. I mean, it is a history taking.
Yes,
It
ma'am.
is, we keep this as a marking, that is 10%. Now suppose this is a 27-year-old male, right? Now
Yes,
with this background, suppose he has a significant weight loss. Okay. Now he is not on any dieting and all. Okay. Now this is another thing is very important. No, people they want to diet and they want to lose weight. That is one thing. That is a separate topic in itself. But here we assume this patient is not wanting to lose weight, but automatically he starts losing weight. Okay. One is there is loss of appetite and loss of weight, and in fact that's the only reason sometimes the patient comes to you. I have a significant loss of weight. So what are the possibilities you think?
Yes, ma'am. So if it's loss of weight, we would go into the differential diagnosis of TB, Hodgkin lymphoma, CML, and the cancers and TB, ma'am. We will go into that angle. If it,
Chronic TB and malignancy.
hematological malignancy. It can also be
7-year-old.
cachex.
HIV, ma'am.
Yes,
Very
ma'am.
good.
HIV.
So,
Yes, ma'am.
you should always have that in your background. Okay, HIV. Then what else? We have the epidemic of India. Non-communicable disease epidemic.
Diabetes.
Diabetes, yes. Very important. In fact, they only come with a loss of weight. Okay, then you probe, they'll have this polyuria, polydipsia, polyphagia. In fact, they'll say, nalla saapidren, ana weight lose pandren. That will be the typical history you'll get. Okay. Nowadays, it is not that above 40 and all. We are seeing, unfortunately, even young fellows who are coming with diabetes. Okay. So all this should be back of your mind when a patient comes with a loss of weight. Okay. Okay. Now you should include it in history of presenting illness. Okay. Okay. Go to the past history.
No history of TB, diabetes mellitus, hypertension, asthma, heart disease, malignancy, or HIV. There is no history of recent travel. There is no history of previous blood transfusions or intravenous drug abuse, and there is no history of past surgeries.
Okay.
Drug history, there is no history of immunosuppressive or corticosteroid intake, and there is no history of intake of any drugs prior to fever.
Okay, very good. Now, previous.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
No history of, no, next.
Sorry, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, first. No, drug history. Sorry, drug history. Okay?
Yes,
no history of immunosuppressive or corticosteroid intake. Tell me the importance of this.
Yes, ma'am. So immunosuppressives and corticosteroids are some of the rare causes for fever lasting more than 2 weeks, ma'am. So it's called the drug fever.
Very common cause only. What drugs?
Sorry, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
What drugs? What drugs?
Ma'am, all drugs can cause fever except digitalis, ma'am.
My God. Vikram, my God.
Yes,
good. You're answering very well.
Therapy can actually give in an immunosuppressed state. So there could be superadded infections due to immunosuppressed state.
Which conditions you said?
In immunosuppressed state due to steroid usage, ma'am, steroid therapy, post-transplant or...
Yes, very good. So whenever we are planning for steroid or immunosuppressives, right? Like in any patient, now we have malignancy or all this connective tissue disorders where you are going to start steroid. prior to starting steroid, we always rule out tuberculosis before starting steroids. Even methotrexate, in rheumatoid arthritis, we are going to start. So all these drugs, that is why we should be very careful before starting. And we always rule out tuberculosis and all. And suppose if a patient is on immunosuppressants, come with fever, we take it very seriously. Any other fever in a very competent individual, we just see it as outpatient consent. But the same immunosuppressive patient comes for fever 2 days also, we admit and take care because we aggressively manage. Because it does not have a normal presentation. Like even a diabetic is a immunosuppressed state only. So though the signs and symptoms may not be, there may be a lot of damage inside. So we always have to admit and evaluate. That is number one. Now this corticosteroid intake and your infections, what is the latest thing going on in this pandemic? So this pandemic used steroid.
Black fungus, mucormycosis, black fungus.
Yeah, we are having so much of mucormycosis. I think from next week you're all coming back to wards, right? All of you are, I suppose so, I'm not sure. So you can, at present in our GH, we are having 300 cases of mucormycosis. Imagine, no? Diabetes with COVID and steroid, that deadly combo. I don't know what happened. We are having this outbreak of, in my entire, my professional time, I have seen very few cases of mucor. Now at this outbreak starting, I have seen almost 450 cases of mucormycosis. So we cannot take corticosteroids.
Yes, ma'am.
Lightly, no? Though it was a wonder drug which sort of saved a lot of lives, but still we are seeing the devastating another epidemic which is going on. So you should always be alert, careful about all these drugs. Okay. No history of any drug prior to fever. What is the importance of that?
Yes, ma'am. So there's a condition called drug fever, where patient develops a hypersensitivity to certain drugs such as the common drugs, penicillin, cephalosporins, quinolones.
So this, I like to give you this fever, this and all is such a common thing, what we always see in the ward. And I'll tell you as a physician, that is one of the most challenging things is, identifying the fever and treating. We had a CRRI, house surgeon, who had fever. It is this dengue season. Naturally, all of you are always inside the hospital, running around here, there, and all that stuff. So he developed fever, and we found that it was an enteric fever. We treated him. Okay. So by the end of second week also, normally now with such good drugs and we know the sensitivity pattern, so it should come down. Then we saw the fever was not subsiding at all. Even by third week, and I'll tell you something like ASCO, tomorrow you're also coming, and we're all colleagues at some point of the time, we are all going to be colleagues. So we tend to be overprotective with our students, and natural, it is that thing happens. Then what we decided is must be drug fever, and we stopped the drug. And amazingly, within 2 days, all the fever subsided, and we so happily discharged him. So this sort of a thing happens. And then again, just before this, in between this first pandemic and the second pandemic, we had a lot of cases in the ward, and there was one case who came with some viral fever, and but the fever was not subsiding because we have this very bad habit of putting antibiotics. Starting cephalosporin, something. Then finally, 1 week, 2 weeks over, my postgraduate is telling, Ellame panito madam, Ellame normal. Fever subsided, fever, all of us have experienced fever and we know how debilitating it is for us. We lose our appetite, we develop headache, all that. Then, very strongly, we decided that for next 2 to 3 days, we are not going to give any antibiotics. Anyway, the patient is under our coverage. Day and night, we are always available. And very gratifying to see that the fever subsided. So, drug fever is not as rare as we think, no? So,
yes, ma'am.
You should always have this in the back mind. Okay, go to the next slide.
So no history of similar complaints in the family.
Okay, next.
Personal history. Patient is a mixed diet consumer. The reduced appetite is reported. There is a normal sleep pattern and the bowel and bladder habits are regular. Patient is a non-smoker and only consumes alcohol on social occasions.
Okay, you can bring that no history of promiscuity, or if it is there, you have to bring it here. Because HIV, always you should think any patient with fever or a TB patient Yes?
Yes,
The few
ma'am.
cases you should always include. Okay, next.
Summary. A 27-year-old male named Rangaswamy presents to the OPD with complaints of fever and fatigue since 3 weeks and abdominal pain since 5 days, along with reduced appetite. The probable diagnosis is that of infectious etiology such as TB, HIV, or chronic infections such as malaria and Kala-Azar. Possible differentials include malignancies such as leukemia and lymphoma, connective tissue diseases such as SLE and rheumatoid arthritis, and infiltrative disorders such as amyloidosis and sarcoidosis.
Oh, go. So examination, which part you want to examine?
Ma'am, we would mainly examine the abdomen because the fever has localized to the abdominal system, ma'am, because of abdominal pain. So it is a localized
Okay.
fever, ma'am.
Now, now it's a very good summary, but as a undergrads, no, you can stop with. So most probably it is an infectious etiology like TB or HIV, or first I'll think of malaria. You know, when you are going to
Yes,
talk,
ma'am.
whenever we are going to give a differentials or a probable, here we can give only probable differentials. So we'll put what we think the first, then the second, then the third. Always that is it. So I'll first think in terms of malaria. Okay, then of course will be HIV, Kala-Azar. Kala-Azar will be last. Why Kala-Azar will be last?
Ma'am, in Kala-Azar, the...
Usually, which area is common? Northeast, right?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we are in Chennai. Now you told some number Chennai name only you told, no? South Indian name only you
Yes,
told.
ma'am. Chennai.
But
ma'am.
of course, you have to be always alert. We have lot of floating population, no? So we have lot of north and northeast, all those people also coming and going. Okay, so we should always have that in the background. But that will not be your first differential. No, that is right. This other differentials, if we are like as an examiner, where anything can be malignancy and all that. But you can stop with this and you can continue that. I would like to examine after. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Go to your examination.
Yes, ma'am. General physical examination. Patient is conscious, alert, and cooperative, and oriented to time, place, and person. The patient is well built and nourished. Height is 160 centimeter and weight is 65 kg. BMI is 25.4. Head to toe examination. Icterus is present, pallor is present, edema is absent, cyanosis is absent, clubbing is absent, lymphadenopathy is absent. There are no signs of liver cell failure found, and no external markers of TB, HIV, or infective endocarditis are found. Vitals.
Okay. So
Temperature
you
is one. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes,
no,
ma'am.
no, go. We'll finish the vitals, then.
Okay, ma'am. Temperature 102.8 Fahrenheit measured orally. Pulse is 104 beats per minute, which is regular in rhythm, normal volume, no specific character, no vessel wall thickening, no radioradial or radiofemoral delay, and all peripheral pulses are felt. Blood pressure is 118 by 76 mmHg, measured in right upper limb in sitting position. The respiratory rate is 18 breaths per minute and abdominothoracic, and the JVP is not elevated.
Okay. Now, so previous slide. So now we have a fever of 3 weeks duration, fever, chills with rigors, fatigue, and what is the abdominal pain. Now
Yes,
here you have jaundice and anemia, right? Jaundice,
Yes, ma'am.
anemia. Lymphadenopathy is not there. Okay. Fever with jaundice. What are the possibilities?
Yes, ma'am. So this more likely points to malaria, ma'am, because there is both the classical triad of paroxysms of fever along with pallor and icterus are seen. So
Okay.
it can very rarely be CML, where icterus is a rare manifestation, but it is not as likely as malaria as of now, and it cannot. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Something
ma'am.
about CML will not come with fever and all. Maybe incidentally fever will be
yes,
there,
ma'am.
but this is typically we'll think first of infective etiologies. So fever with jaundice, fever, anemia, jaundice. What are the possibilities? One you said is malaria. Then
Yes, ma'am.
others, all infections. What are the other
Hepatitis, ma'am.
Viral hepatitis. Okay, then good. Next.
Leptospirosis, ma'am.
Very good. Leptospirosis, always you should think, especially we are in a endemic area. No, this is a endemic. You can never afford to miss this triad. No, we should not lose a patient by misdiagnosing and all. So that should be in the back of your mind. Then what are the other conditions? Now go to the other conditions. Fever, jaundice, anemia. Then as he said, what malignancies can present? CML fever is very rare.
Yes, ma'am.
What is the other condition? Your rarely all your hemolytic anemias you can have, no? Fever,
Yes, ma'am.
jaundice, anemia. Yes? Which hemolytic anemia? Or now you are suspecting malaria. You gave some drug and now he has come with jaundice. Now what is the possibility?
It can be a side effect, ma'am, of
Chloroquine.
chloroquine.
Auto.
What? No,
G6PD
chloroquine.
deficiency.
Very good, very good. Poor answer, excellent. So G6PD deficiency. Usually, normally G6PD deficiency you will not get. But there are some drugs which may precipitate hemolytic anemia. Once you withdraw the offending drug, the patient can be normal. So it is common. I mean, it's not common, but still you should have it in your mind in a patient with fever, jaundice, and anemia. Okay. Others, okay. Now tell me, when do you call it a significant lymphadenopathy? We'll talk this and we'll go to the next thing. Lymph nodes, no? They said no lymphadenopathy is absent. So we'll say, in other words, we'll put it in a better way, there is no significant lymphadenopathy. Now, when do you say the lymphadenopathy is significant? When you're using a terminology, you should know why you are using.
Ma'am, greater than 1 centimeter lymph node enlargement.
Yeah, so greater than 1 centimeter lymph node enlargement. In fact, more than 1.5 in the inguinal nodes also. Okay. What have they told you in surgery? 1 centimeter only, yeah? You have all finished surgery, right?
For inguinal
ma'am,
only, I've told 2, ma'am.
1.5 to 2, no? Am I right? Okay, so
Yes, ma'am,
inguinal,
correct.
because you are more prone to all these leg injuries and all, no? When we talk about barefoot, it's normal thing. So you can have more than 1 centimeter cervical nodes. Then axillary, I think it's 0.5. And there are few nodes, even if it is palpable, it is very significant, like scalene nodes. And what are the other nodes? Even if it is
Supraclavicular nodes, ma'am.
supraclavicular, more than 1 centimeter. Okay. Now, if it is a left supraclavicular enlargement, what do you call it? What's your
Welch.
Arthros node. Yes, ma'am.
yeah, what does it indicate?
Metastasis of gastric carcinoma, ma'am.
If it is there, we get very worried. Right? Yes, gastrointestinal.
Poor prognosis. Yes.
Yes, poor prognosis. That is extended, no? So it is a very worrisome thing. Now, when do you say
Yes,
there is lymphadenopathy, generalized lymphadenopathy present? There is a certain terminology. Yes. When 3 non-contiguous group of lymph node is palpable. Okay. You have an axillary node, you are going to have a cervical group of node, and you are going to have a submandibular node, one, or cervical group of node, axillary node, and an inguinal node. Now it is what? 3 non-contiguous areas of lymph node enlargement. Okay. Then you call it as generalized lymphadenopathy. Why
Yes,
is it
ma'am.
important? If it is a generalized lymphadenopathy, now I'm again coming back. Fever, jaundice, generalized lymphadenopathy. What are the possibilities?
It rules in Hodgkin lymphoma, ma'am, as one of the
Very good.
differential.
One of the very important differentials that can be there. What else? HIV? Part of your HIV?
HIV also, yes, ma'am.
Yes. TB? Disseminated tuberculosis?
Yes, ma'am. Lymph node TB.
Lymph node enlargement with the liver involvement, with the splenic involvement. It's possible.
Yes,
no?
ma'am.
So
Can be
all
TB.
that is very important. Of course, no signs of liver cell failure. Okay, completion stage. No external. What are the external markers of TB now here?
We can see flictin, ma'am. Flictinular conjunctivitis.
Lectin, yes. Tinea versicolor.
Tinea versicolor.
That is because of any chronic infections you are going to see. Okay, then
Scrofula.
good. Staphyloderma, no? Oh, yeah. That is lymph node enlargement, right? Matted lymph node enlargement. Okay.
Lupus.
Lupus. Yes. Okay. Continue.
Yes, ma'am.
So if this patient is having fever, right? 1 or 2.8.
Yes, ma'am.
And for tachycardia is there, bit of tachycardia. Otherwise seems to be normal. Okay. Go to the examination proper.
Yes, ma'am. Examination of oral cavity. The lips are normal with no signs of cracks, fissures, or scars. Teeth are normal without cavities. The tongue is normal, and the palate or mucosa doesn't have ulcers or patches. So, systemic examination, inspection of abdomen. So, the abdomen is flat, all quadrants move equally with respiration. The umbilicus is normal in position with no nodules or discharges. The skin over the abdomen is normal with no evidence of striae, scars, sinuses, visible pulsations, or peristalsis. The external genitalia and hernial orifices are normal. No supraclavicular fullness is observed. No prominent superficial veins are observed. No visible masses in the abdomen, and no divertication of recti is seen.
Okay, everything is okay. We'll have to comment even about the flanks. Okay.
Flanks, yes, ma'am.
Usually, when there is a massive splenomegaly, you may have a left. You'll have a left flank will be full. If it is massive splenomegaly, otherwise flanks are free. You can tell. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Flanks.
So basically, inspection seems to be very uneventful sort of thing. Nothing.
Yes,
is there.
ma'am. Nothing.
Okay. Go to palpation.
Palpation. On superficial palpation of abdomen, no local rise of temperature or tenderness is felt. No abdominal rigidity.
Local rise of temperature. No warmth or tenderness. Okay.
No warmth or tenderness. Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
No abdominal rigidity and guarding.
Very good.
On deep palpation of abdomen, the liver is palpable 3 cm below the right costal margin, firm in consistency and non-tender. The surface is smooth with round margins. It moves with respiration, and there is absence of pulsation of liver. Spleen is palpable 4 cm below the left costal margin, and the splenic notch is felt. It is soft in consistency and non-tender. The surface is smooth and moves with respiration. No other palpable masses are appreciated.
Okay. Now here, so how do you palpate the liver? Now this will be your usually bedside. No, we'll ask you to demonstrate. So tell me, how are you going to do?
Yes, ma'am. So we have the different methods, ma'am. The conventional method of palpation is where the right hand is placed on the right iliac fossa, which is.
We start with first patient should be lying supine with the
Yes, ma'am. Legs should be flexed.
Good knee, should be knee flexed position. So why do you do that? Because
To relax the abdominal muscles. Yes, ma'am.
Very good. And then you palpate. Yes. Now you start.
Yes, and then we first make sure that the patient has voided all urine and it doesn't have any urine in the bladder, and then
It is a good habit, like that we explain to the patient also what you are going to do, right?
yes, ma'am.
So when you are going to start your examination itself, then we got a consent for examination also, because it goes in the long run. Like nowadays, even all in our people also, it's a courtesy what we do, and especially in your MRCP exams and all, it is a part of your protocol. You will have to tell that I got a consent and then examination. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Even here, once you come to the ward, you have to be very, courteous to the patient. You cannot be just demanding and go and you cannot do that.
Yeah,
They're also human beings. You should have that courtesy. Should first talk. We are going to examine like this. Please allow us to examine, and then only you should do. Now this is very important for you people, because we are all super smart. We have got the best of the marks. We have come up in a very tough way. But all that is there. But one thing what we all seem to be lacking is communication. And I think as a student itself, you should start developing this communication skills. After all, they are also stressed out when they come here. Small things make a lot of difference. So always get a permission and then start examining. Whenever you are going to do exposing the part. Now, if suppose it's a female, so you have to put usually there should be some screen should be put, and always have a female attender with you. All this goes in a long way, to develop a confidence between you and the patient. Okay, so you should have this habit. Once you are coming to the ward rounds and when you are interacting with the patient, your communication should be a most important skill which you should all of you should have. Okay, now how do you examine liver? Okay, continue. So,
yes, ma'am. So we keep the right palm over the right iliac fossa, parallel to the subcostal margin. and we ask the patient to inspire. With each inspiration, we move 1 centimeter upwards, and till we feel the dullness. So suppose we don't feel the dullness.
Percussion, doctor. Percussion is
Oh, sorry, ma'am. Sorry,
percussion.
ma'am.
You should use the right word.
Um,
Since we feel some mass coming in, touching
mass
our,
community.
yeah.
Okay,
You cannot
ma'am.
say percussion only dullness and so on.
Oh, okay.
Here
Feel the mass. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you are feeling some mass in the right iliac fossa. Now you feel a mass. Now how do you confirm, what are the, now you finished surgery, you tell me, what are the masses in the right hypochondrium? What are the possibilities?
In the right hypochondrium, mainly it is biliary tree and the liver, ma'am. So it can be.
Apart from that, can it be
can
even a malignancy, CMR, it can be, no, yeah, so you'll have, how do you differentiate that it is the liver? In other words, I'm not going to go in surgery and all. What are the points to say that this is only liver? Moves with respiration?
Yes, ma'am. Moves with respiration. Don't know, ma'am. Hello, ma'am.
Ma'am, we can't hear your voice, ma'am.
Ma'am, can you hear us, ma'am?
Sorry. So
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, okay, liver you have palpated. So, okay, these are some few basics I'm telling you, okay. So, you'll have to demonstrate, you ask the patient to do deep inspiration, you'll feel the lower end of the touching the palm, right? And then,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
always measure, yeah, so just 3 centimeters below the right nostril margin, usually in the clavicular line, usually, okay.
Mid-clavicular.
Good. And okay, moves with respiration. There is absence of palpation. Splenic spleen. So how do you palpate for spleen?
Yes, ma'am. So,
You start at the right iliac fossa and
yes, ma'am. So
go
we move
diagonally
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
across to
Till
the
we meet
left side.
hypochondrium.
Yeah. And yeah. Why is it so? Why should you do that?
Because the spleen only becomes palpable after 2 to 3 times of its hypertrophy, and the spleen at that point would move towards the umbilicus and towards the right iliac fossa, ma'am. So that's why we go in that
In
direction.
other words, spleen will enlarge towards right iliac fossa. Why is it so? Why should it enlarge like that?
Because initially it enlarges posteriorly and superiorly before 2 to 3 times, and after that the only path of least resistance is this, ma'am, towards the right iliac fossa.
Why?
Phrenicocholic ligament, ma'am.
Yes, because of phrenicocholic and lienorenal ligament. I think these two ligaments don't allow the spleen to enlarge downwards, so it enlarges towards the altius fossa. Okay, so this is the answer we expect. So it is soft, non-tender, 4 centimeters below. Now, is it mild or moderate?
Ma'am, this is moderate splenomegaly, ma'am.
Yeah, very good. So moderate. I think mild to moderate. I think 4 centimeters a cut off, 4 to 8. Then above
4 to
8 is
8,
your.
yes.
So
Yes,
here
yes.
we have a case of hepatosplenomegaly, no other mass. Okay, next.
Yes, ma'am. Percussion of the abdomen. Liver span. The upper border of the liver dullness is percussed at right fifth intercostal space along the mid-clavicular line, and the lower border is percussed 3 centimeter below the right costal margin. Thus, the liver span is 16 centimeter. The tidal percussion is resonant on full inspiration. Spleen, Castell's method, dullness on percussion on full inspiration, and in Nixon's method on percussion, the extent of dullness extends more than 8 centimeter above the left costal margin.
Very good. So you
There
have
is
a
no
delicate
fluid
part.
thrill or shifting dullness.
Very
Yes,
good.
ma'am.
So I think how it differentiates spleen and kidney and all, yesterday only we spoke of. So I'm not going to go in depth. Okay, next slide.
Okay. Auscultation. Bowel sounds are present. No bruits are observed. No venous hum is present. No hepatic or splenic rub is heard. And no succussion splash is not heard, ma'am.
Okay. Where will you get a splenic rub?
Ma'am,
When there is a perisplenitis.
ma'am, we get. Okay, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Like what kind?
Perisplenitis.
Yeah, what
Ma'am,
kind?
splenic rub is seen in sickle cell anemia, ma'am.
Very good.
Can be seen in subacute bacterial endocarditis.
Very infective endocarditis you can have. Now, in where do you get autosplenectomy?
In sickle cell anemia, ma'am.
At what age you will get off?
Autosplenectomy. Yes, ma'am.
Usually by 5 years of age. Okay, okay.
Okay,
So,
ma'am.
splenic rub, you will hear in sickle cell in the pediatric in the babies only. By 5 years now, they develop autosplenectomy. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Then, hepatitis, that is in your what? Like, when there is viral hepatitis, no, on condition you can get a hepatic rub. So, what are bruits you will hear in abdomen?
Bruits. So, ma'am, the bruits we can hear are the renal bruit, the iliac artery bruit, ma'am, the abdominal aorta, and the
Liver, the bruit hurt, right hypochondria?
hepatic bruit, ma'am.
Okay, hepatic
Oh,
bruit.
hepatic
I don't think we'll go much in this. Next slide. Then we'll not be able to complete the discussion. Next.
Yes, ma'am. So, other systems examination, respiratory system,
All are
normal, all are normal.
Okay, next. All are normal, no? We'll go to next.
Yes, ma'am. So, diagnosis. The provisional diagnosis is that of hepatosplenomegaly, of which the most common, the most probable differential is chronic infection, malaria, and Kala-Azar. The other could be HIV, lymphoma, or CML, and of which the most likely, based on history and physical examination findings, is chronic malaria due to the following points: subacute fever, jaundice, pallor, fatigue, and splenomegaly. Further investigations must be carried out to achieve a proper diagnosis.
Okay, now, so we would like to, like, it will be better to say. So this is a case of fever with hepatosplenomegaly. I would like to offer a differential diagnosis. Okay, that is how you are going to say. Now, so what are the differential diagnoses? See, you will not have so much time to write so many things. Now, suppose if it is a short case, this is how you are going to vocalize it. You are going to say this is a case of course, you will not have a fever. No, there is no history taking when you have a short case. Now, let's assume it's a long case. So, it is a fever with a hepatosplenomegaly. I would like to offer the following differentials. Number 1, I would like to think in terms of chronic malaria. Number 2, what will you think?
Number 2 would be HIV, ma'am. Number 3, lymphoma. Number 4,
BMI is not 25. I will not think HIV.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, all the others have been ruled out, ma'am, in the physical
Why
findings.
ruled out?
They are rarely. HIV, sorry, ma'am.
Yes, it's not been ruled out. Nothing prevents a healthy individual to have. No, I'm not telling. But less possible. For me, see how you are going to say. You are going to offer a differential diagnosis. Okay, this we have written. It is like writing you are in a clinic. Very specific. The patient is with you, and you are analyzing. You are offering a differential diagnosis. It's a fever with histoplasmic. It's not an acute pathology. It's a bit of a chronic over. But there is no normal loss of appetite. That is why you are thinking malaria as the first diagnosis. Second, what to offer?
Yes, ma'am.
I take cough. Even this is also the rise of temperature and all. But that will be TB like very common, no? Common is common. Number 3, I would like to think in terms. What do you think? Number 3. Number 2 is that. Number 3, I would like to think in terms of compromised state, maybe HIV. But HIV usually presenting with the sort of you should have loss of appetite. That is why I am putting that in the differential. More differential logical malignancy. Why are you thinking of CML? What CML? Usually they have massive splenomegaly. Okay. Now, what is it? Any more slides are there?
Ma'am, investigations, ma'am.
Okay, tell me the investigations.
Ma'am. So we do CBC and peripheral smear mainly to rule in malaria and rule out any other malignancies. 4th generation HIV antigen antibody assay to rule out HIV. Thick and thin peripheral smear and quantitative Buffy-Coat analysis to confirm with high sensitivity malaria, and miscellaneous investigations such as sputum culture sensitivity to rule out TB, CT abdomen to rule out any other lymphadenopathy or such findings, and blood culture to rule out any bloodborne infections, ma'am.
Sputum culture, the patient does not have cough in sputum, no? Apart from that, our routine investigation. This is specific for yours. Now, we'll discuss what are in your case, what are the possibilities. So, fever, hepatosplenomegaly. So, first possibility, we're going to think in terms of malaria. Okay, with jaundice and anemia. So, now tell me the differentials of hepatosplenomegaly. What are all possibilities?
So
infective, infiltrative, all that, no? Tell me, infective, what are the possibilities?
Yes, ma'am. So the causes of hepatosplenomegaly can be like, yes, ma'am, can be infiltrative, such as amyloidosis or sarcoidosis. It could be also. It could also be infections such as the malaria. It can be any hepatitis. Rarely, it can even be infectious mononucleosis, ma'am.
Very good. Infectious mononucleosis.
Because young patient.
Hepatitis, viral hepatitis.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, viral hepatitis. Usually, it will be hepatomegaly. It's having moderate megaly, right? So I don't think anything hepatitis. Okay. Then, of course, chronic viral hepatitis you can have. Okay. Then, what are the infections?
Yes,
brucellosis.
So.
Yes.
Brucellosis, yes, ma'am. I thought usually leptospirosis resolves within 2 weeks, so it is ruled out. Chronic is possible, ma'am, in leptospirosis.
Not lepto, brucellosis, brucella.
Oh, sorry, ma'am. Brucellosis. Sorry. Okay. Brucellosis.
Not lepto. Yeah. This is 3. I'm not talking in the general. Any hepatosplenomegaly. Okay. It's infectious mononucleosis. Okay. What are the other causes? Tuberculosis.
Yes, ma'am. It can also be multiple myeloma can also cause, ma'am. If there is bone pain, that's why we ruled it out.
Okay, bone pain. Malignancy. So let's come to malignancy. Hepatosplenomegaly. Okay. What are the possibilities? It can be.
Yes, ma'am.
Hodgkin's or non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
lymphoma, multiple
Yeah, it can be
myeloma,
acute myeloid leukemia.
IML,
Acute myeloid
yes, ma'am.
leukemia.
CLL also, ma'am. Chronic
CML will
lymphocytic leukemia.
CML will have massive splenomegaly. Okay, liver will very
CLL,
rarely will
ma'am.
be possible.
CLL is
Yes,
possible,
very
ma'am.
good. Now in CLL, what will be the added feature? Lymphatically, என்ன இருக்கணும்? Lymph node should be palpable. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but of course it can be possible, but it comes last. Okay, then what are the other possibilities? Hepatosplenomegaly.
Ma'am, even cirrhosis can cause, ma'am. Rare
Very good. Cirrhosis with portal hypertension.
hypertension. Yes,
Hepatosplenomegaly.
ma'am.
Okay, then
Okay.
Buchiari syndrome.
Congestive heart failure. Ma'am, congestive heart failure can cause, ma'am.
Very good. Okay, congestive cardiac failure. But there will be a tender liver.
A tender, yes, ma'am.
Congestive failure.
Okay,
Then
ma'am. Typhoid also can cause, ma'am.
entry fever, you also told, Gaucher's,
Storage
all these are
diseases, yes, ma'am.
storage disorders. So many things are there when there is hepatosplenomegaly. With lymphadenopathy, there are set of conditions. Now here, most likely, we are going to think in terms of malaria. So you are going to do your CTC peripheral function test. Don't you think it is not important here? Patient is having jaundice also.
Yes, ma'am.
Right?
You have to do.
Fever, jaundice, anemia, hepatosplenomegaly. Okay. So in peripheral smear, if there is any leukemias or something, you are going to have a picture in your peripheral smear. Complete blood count. What is the type of anemia you will get? So what is the type of anemia you are going to get in malaria?
Normocytic normochromic anemia, ma'am.
That is chronic
Hemolytic
infection.
anemia,
If it is malaria,
which is
hemolytic. So if it is a malignancy, you will get all the this malignant, the myelocytes or myeloblasts or whatever. That is the thing.
or blast
Then you are
cells.
going to do
Yes,
HIV. Yes, thick and thin smear. For malaria, you should be very thorough with it. Now we don't have time. I'm just completing. You can do. And that CT abdomen. What is the importance of CT abdomen?
ma'am, maybe to rule out any other lymph nodes.
Before CT abdomen, you can do ultrasound abdomen. Before that, you should ultrasound abdomen and then CT abdomen. Ultrasound abdomen, you can pick up the nodes. Usually, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma nodes. Common in this age group, the 27 to 30 year male fever. நம்ம வந்து TB-னு treat பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கோம். So immunity is important. Now suppose the lymph node is in the see, if it is paravertic node, see, so there is a node which is visible and palpable, like that stuff. No, you can do a cervical node aspiration and biopsy, which will confirm your diagnosis. And of course, that is important to rule out all the also. Okay, so just here with hepatosplenomegaly, how you are going to approach? Okay. Of course, diagnosis, then you do come to a. In addition to that, you are going to function test. You have your routine ingestion. You're in a compromised state. Done. Okay. Okay. Vikram presented presentation and good. You answered most of the questions. Okay. Any doubts? We'll wind up this session. Okay. Thank you all. Anything you want to ask or we have this?